Daily Express, you say that Liz Truss needs to now, I quote, err away from things we know are going to be highly controversial and the losers are going to be extremely visible. Does this mean welfare payments? Does it mean bankers' bonuses? What are you getting at, Lord Frost?
Well, I think it's a bigger question, actually, behind that, which is that the government is, I think, doing the right thing in trying to set a new direction, heading for growth, but they're going about it in quite a amateurish, bungling way. They've made political errors, avoidable mistakes, and they haven't explained enough. And as a result, they risk getting a coalition of people who want the status quo to maintain against them, and they've got to break out from this.
The row over the 45p rate of tax and the aftermath, is that the beginning of the end?
Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but foresight is even better. And I think it would have been better if this had not been part of the package. No, it's not the beginning of the end, but it does show that they need to find ways of avoiding making these unnecessary political errors, explaining what they're doing, bringing people with us.
Look, you're a negotiator, you're a diplomat. Isn't it going to make it very difficult for them to get certain reforms through? If a group of backbenchers think, well, if we shout loud enough, they'll change their mind, what does it mean for the future?
Well, this is the problem now. I worry that this rather weak start is going to discredit the whole agenda, that every time we try and do anything, there's going to be a coalition against it. And I think the only way to deal with that is to pause, explain, set out what needs to be done in a more thoughtful way. You've got to get the political project right. The government needs to show a lot more empathy and understanding with the difficulties that people face. They need to understand that people are scared going into this autumn. Talk about support, talk about helping through it, do the difficult stuff later when people understand why it's necessary.
Some people might say the difficult stuff is such things such as the Northern Ireland Protocol, reminding listeners you were chief negotiator for exiting the European Union. Northern Ireland Minister Steve Baker says we need to apologise to Ireland for the way we treated them during Brexit. Is he right?
So Steve has his own particular way of dealing with these things. I think an honest assessment is that things could have been done differently on both sides. I think the UK has been the victim of poor behaviour from the EU in Ireland, and there are things probably on reflection we would have done differently, but that was the way things were. I don't think it helps to kind of rake over that the whole time. The important thing is to try and find an agreement, if they possibly can, now.
So we don't need to say sorry?
I don't think if we can find an agreement on Northern Ireland, then we can reset and move forward at that point.
What do you see as a potential? What are the grounds for an agreement with Northern Ireland and exiting the European Union?
Well, we put forward ideas last summer on this. It's got to bring the trading arrangements in Northern Ireland much more clearly back into those of the rest of the United Kingdom. And exactly how that is done, there are different ways of doing it, but there needs to be a major shift back so that Northern Ireland feels economically part of the UK again.
Lord Frost, you've attended some Conservative Party conferences down the years. How would you assess the mood of this year's?
I mean, it feels flat. I think everyone knows that some mistakes were made and that it's going to be quite difficult to move on from them. I think a big effort needs to be made to rally the troops, to get people feeling better, and that means not doubling down, but pausing, understanding, reflecting, working out the best way forward.
We were discussing that perhaps one of the skills that Boris Johnson brought to the party was that he was able to balance both sides. He was as you know better than anyone, he was an extraordinary front man and he kept them balanced. Are they starting to realise what they've lost by displacing Boris Johnson?
I mean, Boris had amazing political skills. I'm a huge admirer of Boris, despite all the criticisms I've made of him. But I think part of what he did in balancing things was also avoiding difficult decisions sometimes. And sometimes you can't avoid those. You have also got to choose your moment when you start off on a different path and do things differently, and that is also a political skill.
Do you see a path to bring back Boris?
No. I think the party has moved on. I think the world is changing fast. I mean, Boris is a great guy, and I'm sure we'll see more of him. But I can't quite see him coming back into government.
We're going to see more of the new Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, today. One of her policies is she'll announce plans for a new law barring anyone who crosses the Channel from claiming asylum in Britain. Now, that is quite a radical U-turn. Lord Frost, will it work?
Well, I strongly support the idea, if that is what's announced today. I think it's another of these things that may run up against problems within the party. So, but I believe that most of our supporters, people who may support us, would like to see this pushed through. So I hope the party listens on that and allows it to happen.
I know if I ask you, can Liz Truss win the next election, you're going to say, of course she can. So I'll rephrase it. Will Liz Truss win the next election?
Of course she can.
You see what he did there?
There's a long time till the next election. Lots of things can happen, and it's absolutely possible to get a grip and start explaining and start undoing some of the political damage that's been done in the last couple of weeks.
And finally, were you offered a post with Liz Truss's government?
Well, I don't want to go into sort of all the ins and outs of it. We took, there were soundings, there were discussions. It wasn't the sort of thing where I felt I could best help, and so the discussion moved on.
What was it they talked about? You know I'm going to ask.
I don't want to go into sort of confidential discussions.
But it wasn't for you?
But it wasn't something where I felt I could help best.
Thanks for coming by the studio. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you very much, David. Now, Lord Frost, former Cabinet Office Minister and, of course, Chief Negotiator for exiting the European Union.